The rain hammered against the restaurant windows, turning the neon lights outside into blurred streaks of color. Inside, everything moved with quiet precision, soft music, hushed conversations, and the subtle tension that came with serving powerful people. Elena balanced the tray in her hands, her eyes lowered as she moved between tables. She knew who the guests were tonight. Everyone did. The Don and his family rarely appeared in public, and when they did, it meant something important was happening. Sophia sat beside her father, small and out of place among the stern faces surrounding her. Elena noticed her nervous glances, the way her fingers clutched the edge of the tablecloth. For a moment, their eyes met, and Elena offered a faint, reassuring smile before continuing her work. Then the doors burst open. The sound was violent, unnatural, followed instantly by shouting and the unmistakable crack of gunfire. Panic exploded through the room. Guests screamed, chairs toppled, and glass shattered across the floor. Elena froze for half a second, her heart slamming against her ribs. Then she saw Sophia, still sitting there, too shocked to move. Without thinking, Elena dropped the tray and ran. Bullets tore through the air as she crossed the distance, her breath caught in her throat. She reached Sophia and threw herself over the girl, wrapping her arms tightly around her as shots rang out dangerously close. The world shrank to the sound of gunfire, and the weight of fear pressing down on her chest. Then, just as suddenly as it began, silence fell. Elena woke to silence so complete it felt unreal. For a moment, she thought she was still dreaming, suspended somewhere between the chaos of gunfire and whatever came after. Then the dull ache spread through her body, grounding her in reality. She blinked slowly, her vision adjusting to a ceiling far too elegant to belong to any hospital she had ever seen. Soft, golden light filtered through tall curtains, and the scent of polished wood and fresh linen filled the air. She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her side, forcing a quiet gasp from her lips. Almost instantly, a nurse appeared, gently pressing her back down and murmuring for her to rest. Elena's mind raced. Where was she? What had happened after the shooting? And most importantly, was the girl safe? As if summoned by her thoughts, the door opened again. Sophia rushed in, her small face lighting up with relief. Without hesitation, she ran to Elena's bedside and carefully wrapped her arms around her. You saved me, she whispered, her voice trembling. Elena managed a weak smile, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's face. Behind her stood the Don. His presence filled the room, calm yet commanding. His sharp eyes studied Elena, not with suspicion, but something deeper, respect. He stepped forward slowly, his voice low and steady as he spoke. You risked your life for my daughter. A pause followed, heavy with meaning. That is a debt I do not ignore. Elena felt a chill despite the warmth of the room, realizing her life had just changed forever. Days passed, yet Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she was living inside something fragile, like a dream that might shatter at any moment. The mansion was vast and eerily quiet, its polished floors echoing with footsteps that always seemed to stop when she came near. Conversations hushed, doors closed, and glances lingered just a second too long. Though she was treated with care, even kindness, she could feel the weight of suspicion pressing in from every corner. Sophia remained her only comfort. The girl visited daily, bringing warmth into the cold, guarded halls. They talked, laughed softly, and shared moments that almost felt normal. But even Sophia couldn't shield Elena from the tension that gripped the household. Guards stood at every entrance, their eyes constantly scanning, their hands never far from their weapons. Something was wrong, and everyone knew it. One evening, as Elena wandered down a quiet corridor, she overheard raised voices behind a half-closed door. The Don and his closest men were arguing, about betrayal, about information being leaked, about someone on the inside. Elena's breath caught as she stepped back, her pulse quickening. This wasn't just fear, it was war brewing beneath the surface. Then she saw it. A face in her memory, sharp and unmistakable. One of the attackers from that night. A man she had known long ago, from a life she had tried to forget. The realization hit her like ice. This wasn't random. And somehow, she was connected to it. The next attack came without warning, sharper and more precise than the first. This time it wasn't a public ambush, it struck closer to home. The mansion's outer gates erupted in gunfire just after midnight, alarms slicing through the silence as guards rushed into position. Elena jolted awake, her heart racing, the echoes of that first night crashing back into her mind. Shouts filled the halls. Footsteps thundered past her door. She stepped into the corridor just as Sophia's frightened voice called out. Without hesitation, Elena ran to her, pulling the girl close as distant gunshots cracked through the air. But something was different now. This wasn't blind chaos. It was targeted. Planned. The Don appeared moments later, issuing commands with cold precision. His men moved like a machine, blocking entrances, securing exits. Yet even in the controlled response, tension burned in his eyes. This breach had come too easily. Elena's thoughts spiraled until she couldn't hold it in any longer. "I know who they are," she said, her voice trembling but firm. The room fell silent. Every gaze turned toward her. She spoke of the man from her past, of connections she had tried to bury, of whispers she once ignored. The name alone shifted the air, dangerous, familiar. The Dom listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When she finished, the silence stretched. Instead of anger, he nodded slowly. "Then you will help me end this." In that moment, Elena's role changed forever. She was no longer just someone being protected, she had become part of the fight. The truth came like a crack through glass, sharp, sudden, and impossible to ignore. Suspicion had been circling for days, tightening around the family like a noose, but no one expected it to end like this. The traitor wasn't a distant associate, or a low-level informant. It was someone inside the inner circle, someone trusted, someone who had stood beside the Don for years. Elena stood frozen as the confrontation unfolded in the grand hall. Guards lined the walls, weapons ready, while the accused man was dragged forward. His face remained calm, almost defiant, even as the weight of betrayal settled over everyone present. Sophia clung to Elena's hand, sensing the shift in the air, the heaviness of something breaking beyond repair. The Don stepped forward slowly, his gaze colder than ever before. There was no shouting, no dramatic outbursts, just a quiet, controlled fury that made the room feel suffocating. "Why?" he asked, his voice low. The answer was simple. Power. Resentment. A belief that the empire could be taken, reshaped. It was enough. What followed was swift and final. The decision was made, and justice, by the family's code, was carried out without hesitation. No one looked away, but no one felt untouched either. Trust had been shattered, and its absence echoed louder than any gunshot. Later, as silence returned, Elena stood on the edge of it all, realizing something deeper. She had crossed a line she could never step back from. This was no longer just survival. This was loyalty, and it had a cost. The city felt different after the war, quieter on the surface but carrying the weight of everything that had been lost. The Don's empire still stood, its power unquestioned, yet something within it had shifted. The halls of the mansion no longer felt as cold, though the memories lingered in every corner. Faces were missing, voices silenced forever, and the cost of victory was something no one could ignore. Elena stood on the balcony as the evening sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows across the city. The same city where, not long ago, she had been just another invisible face, moving quietly through crowded rooms. Now, everything had changed. Not because she had sought it, but because she had chosen, again and again, to stand her ground when it mattered most. Behind her, soft footsteps approached. Sophia slipped her hand into Elena's, no longer the frightened girl from that night, but stronger, steadier. There was trust in her eyes now, something unbreakable. Elena smiled gently, squeezing her hand in return. Moments later, the Don joined them. His presence was still commanding, but there was a quiet calm about him that hadn't been there before. He looked at Elena, not as an outsider, but as someone who belonged. No grand speech was needed. The respect in his eyes said everything. Elena took a slow breath, looking out over the city once more. She hadn't just survived this world, she had become part of it. And this time, she wasn't alone.